All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of the Crime and Gun Violence Prevention Commission for March 2nd, 2026. I apologize in advance for my voice. I'm just getting over laryngitis, so if I'm a little raspy and if you can't hear me, just ask me to speak up. Before we go any further, I just want to acknowledge the fact that we are involved in a global conflict that kicked off early Saturday morning that, because of Portsmouth's unique nature as a military city, is impacting families from our city and from Hampton Roads, certainly, or people who have passed through Portsmouth. So it'll have an impact on people who have been here, ships that have been here, vessels and aircraft that have traveled from Hampton Roads. So I acknowledge that, and I just want to let those people know, to those who are viewing online, that you are in our thoughts. Also, along with that comes a change to our city's security posture, because we are a military city, and as many cities across the United States are facing the potential for the need for increased security as a result of what's happening right now in the world and things that have happened in the past 24 hours in other cities, it also requires a change to our agenda. Chief Jenkins will not be with us this evening, but when we do get to that point in the agenda, I'll have a few updates from things that I learned this weekend from the City Council retreat. So with that in mind, we'll move to our normal agenda and start with the roll call, and I believe we will start all the way to the right. If you just call off and save me my voice.
Gene Swinson.
Darrell Redmond.
Keith Rice.
Sarah Ray.
Leticia Sessoms.
George Grove.
And I've also heard from Commissioner Hartge, and she is delayed en route, but she will be arriving late for the meeting, so thank you. Has everyone had the opportunity to look at the most recent meeting minutes? And if so, does anybody have any issues or problems with the meeting minutes? Say again? And remember that we are also, we missed last month's meeting due to snow. So we're talking about the minutes of the January 5th, 2026 meeting.
I motion to approve the minutes from the January 5th, 2026 meeting.
Anyone second?
Second.
Commissioner Redmond seconds. All in favor? Any opposed? And as predicted, Commissioner Hartge has just arrived, so perfect timing. Thank you. The minutes are approved. Has everyone had the opportunity to look at this evening's agenda with the amendment that I'd proposed?
I make a motion to approve the agenda with the adjustment indicating that Chief Jenkins won't be present and that Chairman Cullum will give an update.
Second.
Anyone opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you. Okay, so moving to second item agenda, old business, public comment policy discussion. So just to refresh the audience and those of us who are here on the dais, a little bit over a year ago, we'd initially brought up the question and the problem of public comment at these meetings. Public attendance is always welcome, but the question of public comment, and Commissioner Redmond brought it up at a most recent meeting, that a year has passed, although in January of last year, we had voted against having public comment opportunity at these meetings and instead pushing it to other public engagement sessions. He'd asked to revisit that, and the only thing that delayed us last month was the fact that several members of this commission were new and had not had the opportunity to look at the draft speaker rules that we had created. So we've now had actually more than a month to take a look at that. So is anybody, I guess I'm going to reopen this for comment and discussion in light of the fact that we've had a chance to look over the new or the revised rules or for potential public speakers at those meetings. So I'm open for comment. Or input.
My only input or question is, I know I wasn't present for the January meeting, and is there a place that I could easily access the draft so that I could take a look at it? Do we know?
I'll give you a copy right now.
Thank you.
Right there, yeah. What's that? Yeah. And Commissioner Redmond, being the one who had brought this back up again, did you have anything further that you wanted to add to it, or did you have a motion that you'd like to make?
Yes, I would like a motion to, move a motion to allow speakers to speak in the open forum during Crime Commission meeting.
Anyone? We have a motion. Anyone interested in a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a second from Commissioner Harji. And then I'll read this for the record while my fellow commissioners are rereading that. The draft as written, request by citizens to address the Portsmouth Crime and Gun Violence Prevention Commission. Section A, speakers. All requests from members of the general public to address the Portsmouth Crime and Gun Violence Commission, thereafter the commission, on a subject of the business agenda or on a non-agenda item shall be submitted to the commission's secretary prior to the calling of the meeting to order. Provided, however, prior requests shall not be required as a condition to speak during any public hearing, bless you, if the commission considers, bless you again, an official vote on a resolution, ordinance recommendation, expenditure recommendation, bless you, or other similar action, then it shall be treated as a public hearing, and any citizen shall be entitled to speak for up to 5 minutes prior to the vote without having to make a prior request to speak. Request to speak shall be via email, bless you, or, it's not a problem, or in-person notification to the commission secretary, and shall include the name of the speaker, his or her address, telephone number, the name of the group or organization, if any, on whose behalf he or she is speaking, the number and name of the agenda item to which the citizen shall speak, and whether the speaker supports or opposes the agenda item. For non-agenda speakers, for non-agenda items, the request shall also identify the subject matter or topic on which the person will speak. Unless the speech is limited by law, ordinance, or commission rules or procedures, or the item in question is a personnel matter, which was or could have been discussed in a closed meeting under Virginia Code Section 2.2, TAC 3711, a person may be recognized to speak on any item on the commission agenda designated as a public hearing, and a person may register to speak on any item on the commission agenda designated as unfinished business requiring commission action, on any city manager's report requiring commission action, or designated as a forum for non-agenda speakers, or otherwise required under commission bylaws or rules of order and procedure. A speaker must remain on subject. Therefore, a non-agenda speaker may not address agenda items and vice versa. All remarks shall be directed to the commission as a body rather than to any particular member of the commission or any member or staff or the audience. All comments should be limited to matters that only the Portsmouth Crime and Gun Violence Commission can influence. The commission secretary shall advise citizens of this requirement, and the chair or presiding officer shall enforce it as needed. Each speaker shall have a maximum speaking time of 5 minutes for each occasion on which he or she speaks. A person may not relinquish or transfer his speaking time or her speaking time to another person. When 2 or more speakers desire to address the same subject, they shall be permitted to speak in the order in which the requests were submitted on the date of the meeting. Section B, addressing the commission. Any person addressing the commission shall conform to this section. For any failure to conform, he or she shall be declared out of order by the chair or presiding officer and shall forthwith yield the floor. So that, I just want to make clear what it is that we put on the, and put that on the record as what we're voting on. We can work out the mechanics of how this will work as far as having the secretary read notice and things like that. But this is the item that's been presented by Commissioner Redmond for a vote. And with that in mind, a vote of yea will be in favor, a vote of nay will be a negative. With that in mind, we have a vote, or correction, we have a motion from Commissioner Redmond, which has been seconded and now calls for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any negative or opposed? Okay, so that carries and passes. I believe because of the mechanics, we're going to have to make this into a next meeting as a way of opening the floor and a speaker statement. And just also for the record, this essentially mirrors, other than the wording of commission versus council, what is currently being done by the Portsmouth City Council. And I would also recommend that if there are changes to that speaker policy, that we examine that and decide if that is something that we need to follow as well, because that's usually guided by changes in changes in law, changes in case law, things like that. So thank you. I appreciate everybody's input on that. Commissioner Redmond.
My question is, I know that we said that the speakers would be able to get in contact with the secretary. So is there a way that we can find out who the secretary is, get it out to the community so they'll know who?
Chantel.
You the liaison, the secretary?
Yeah, so as part of our public notice, they can reach out with her to get onto the agenda, so that it would actually be on the agenda for the upcoming meeting. And it can be, I think we said, right up until roll call.
My question is, do we have a secretary on the crime commission?
Yes, Chantel.
You the secretary of the crime commission too?
Yeah.
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 The reason why I'm making this statement is because Chantel is overwhelmed. She's already has 50 things going on. So 50 people calling to sign up for this when there's already 50 things on the agenda, I believe is a disservice to her as being a liaison to take on another task. Is it a way that we can create somebody else who can get those calls and have it in place so that these people can speak? Because interrupting a day of cycle of her overseeing program manager, programming, and taking on another task that we've thrown on top of her to say, everybody from the community calling, the capacity, I don't believe is there, or I doesn't believe it's fair for the commission to impute that job on her.
Right. Also, for the record, the city manager has arrived, and I'll ask him to provide input if he has input as to whether or not we are able to, instead of having a city employee as a designee, as the secretary, if we're able to have a volunteer member of the commission itself serve, at least for the capacity of fielding those requests and placing them on the agenda.
Is that a question for me you want to answer?
Yes. And welcome.
Good evening. I arrived just in time. Thank you, Mr. Redmond. That is great information that you provided. When you're considering doing things that require personnel or staff to do, you got to consider who's going to actually get it done. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to put something out that people can't actually get done. Yes, Ms. Chantel is probably reaching her capacity as we speak with all the other things that we're requiring of her internally. But the short answer to your question is absolutely. You as a board can have your own staff or your own board member serve as a contact for your board. So if you choose to do it that route, absolutely. Okay.
I appreciate it. With that in mind, I'll then open the floor for any volunteers who would like to serve in that capacity.
I would just like to point something out per the bylaws. The bylaws indicate that the city manager's designee shall serve as secretary. So I believe that puts us in the position where Ms. Matthews would remain secretary.
Right,
But we
correct.
might have a designee.
Correct. Somebody
And a-
fielding these inquiries and calls.
You're not voting on whether or not you got a secretary.
It's just who's going to field, well, and per,
A task.
Yep.
Noted.
Who would
And-
handle that particular?
And per the documentation, it says request to speak shall be via email or in-person notification. So that means that there has to be, the person has to be accessible for in-person notification, which needs to be considered as well.
I would put that in.
Well, I believe we've already,
You've already.
I
Yeah,
believe we've
that-
already
It's a mirror
approved
image
that.
of the council.
So I just wanted to make sure, my first suggestion was to make a generic speaker at Crime Commission email or something
That would be the easiest.
that could be accessible, but it might mean that we need to open up our discussion again about the
The content.
the content.
Yeah.
I think we may have put the cart before the horse once we recognize that, because I wholeheartedly agree that Ms. Matthews is
Maxed
doing a
out.
great job and has been maxed out. I know I've said that before. So I would make the suggestion that we start with the creation of a generic email, and then the rest of the commissioners can make a decision about the intent of this, if it is to allow people without email access to this board, then we might have to come up with another mechanism. So
I guess.
that's my feedback.
And
I guess the first question is, I want to make sure we've cleared the deck on, do we have anybody who's interested in taking on that specific role of fielding requests from the public to be speakers or non-agenda speakers at the Crime Commission meetings? If anyone who's interested in taking on that burden. Hearing nothing, that brings us to your point, which is,
Anticipated that also.
yes,
so, excuse me. I think
yes, Commissioner Redmond.
two things in regards to that. As you say, we did say we can do it. As you say, could we shelf it for about 2 weeks? I mean, we have a month to next month
Every
till we
month,
meet.
yes.
Could we figure that out within the month and then allow the public, somehow get it to the public with them being able to know that they will be able to speak, and to actually add on to what Ms. Sarah was saying? I still do believe that there needs to be, that's why I said the capacity probably wouldn't be good with Ms. Chantel or whoever, because I do believe that the community needs to have a way to call, because a lot of people I deal with in the community, they don't have access to email. A lot of these people that we be addressing the council aren't your traditional people who use traditional systems, so we need to have untraditional ways so they can get their voices heard. And sometimes that's the gap. The gap is not being able to access the technology. Everybody doesn't have Wi-Fi. Everybody doesn't have the access to the same luxuries that some of us have. So to leave them out of the conversation when they're closer to the solution is a disservice to the people that we're servicing.
100%. Chantel, as far as public notice requirements, how long in advance do you need to publish that information, in your opinion?
So I usually work on the agenda documents the Wednesday before the meeting to meet FOIA requirement.
Right, okay.
So I wouldn't need it before then.
So,
So probably that Tuesday.
yeah. So to answer Commissioner Redmond's question, we have at least 2 weeks, 3 at the very latest,
Yeah.
to come up with
Correct.
a solution to this. And we can have those offline discussions and figure out, what's our best way forward from a technology standpoint, from an in-person availability standpoint. So we can have those discussions. Okay, anything further on this agenda item?
So
Yes.
I think because we approved it already and we're modifying it, we have to retract that.
I don't know if we're modifying, well,
Yeah, we
right now
are.
it still says to the secretary. We don't have a solution to modify it to yet.
But if we're gonna list it in 2 to 3 weeks, is that what I heard?
Yeah.
And we still don't have aren't we adding a phone number?
We're considering adding an email address, but as far as the substance of this goes, the burden is still falling to the secretary. I think what we're trying to figure out is how can we make that easier? It's still her who has to give the public notice. It's still her who has to generate the agenda. it wouldn't be one of us taking on the agenda generation or any of that.
But are we prepared, is what I'm saying.
I don't know
So
if
we don't have that. It just, it's messy, you know,
Yeah.
and if we're not prepared, they already don't, you
Right.
know, feel
Right,
good about this. They don't believe in what we're doing. And then if we present something
Right.
and we don't know who's the contact person, I think we may need to wait until we identify a designee before we move forward.
Sounds like you have a motion that you'd like to
Yeah,
make.
it's my motion.
So the motion, as I understand it, is to, well, first we will have to have a motion to retract our last decision. And then, once we get past that, that gives us another 3 weeks to work on where we want to be for next month's meeting. So if I understand it, the motion is to retract the most recent motion and vote, which was to adopt the draft speaker rules, and to do further work between now and the next meeting, when this may come up again. Does that sound like what we're voting on? Okay. Go ahead.
Before we make that, could we agree that by next month, we will have somebody designated, because making a community wait is an injustice as well. So we had a month to look at this. Within a month, we should have somebody designated. Am I correct? By parties? I don't want to say it. Are we going to have it? Because I'm in the
We
community.
don't know.
So,
We will hope for it,
So
but
what-
realistically saying,
so what we voted on.
Can we have somebody?
nobody up here has agreed.
No.
So what we voted on thus
She's
far
overwhelmed.
places the secretary in that position. And as I understand this, it will always be the ultimate responsibility of the secretary to generate the agenda and the speakers who are on it. I think what we're looking for is a mechanism or a person who's going to try to relieve that burden from her. In other words, essentially hand her a list of here's who my names are for the agenda. Ultimately, it's still Chantel who remains the secretary, which doesn't change what's here. But if we can relieve that burden by providing her with a person to field the requests, to field the input, and to have a list of names, whether they're agenda speakers or non-agenda speakers, prior to each meeting, prior to roll call of each meeting. I think that's where we need to be. So we've adopted speaker rules with her as the ultimately responsible party, but what we're trying to figure out is, can we relieve that burden of the legwork prior to the meeting? It still ultimately falls to her as the secretary to be the one to generate the agenda and to place the names on it.
I mean,
Commissioner
I agree
Hartshee.
with that, but it was put on the floor that she's overwhelmed. So if we know that a person is overwhelmed and they're at their bandwidth, we're adding more to their plate. We're not valuing that person. So because we are not able to identify a person right now, and this is the only time we literally meet, then I don't think it's a good idea to move forward with something, because there's no uniform here.
Right. And, go ahead.
sorry.
I had Commissioner Hartshee, who was,
So is there
Conversation, right?
would there be anything preventing us from actually, instead of it being an email, create an online form that would be, if nobody wants to step up to do it, an online form that would be very easy for Chantel to just copy and paste, or what would be easier for you?
I think, if I'm just being fully transparent.
Please.
That adding that responsibility on top of what's already being added to my plate, I would like to not be attached to that responsibility if at all possible. Now, what I was thinking through to get us through this first month, let's work through the process, have me serve as the point person, because there's no guarantee that this is going to be an overwhelming response.
yeah, we don't know what the response is going to be.
Let's see where the load is. Let's see how many people we have coming to us. And then once I have that data, maybe knowing, hey, it's not that big of a load, someone here would take over that piece of the responsibility.
Or
I just don't think it's gonna be overwhelming to the point where someone on this, in this space wouldn't be able to handle it. But I would probably take the opportunity to like show y'all that it's whoever wants to take it over, it's not gonna be overwhelming.
I'm just wondering if an online form that's very distinct. So instead of somebody being able to submit an email and then they can just ramble on, and then you got to sit there and read through the email and try to piece together what to put on the agenda. If there was like a form and they could just click and fill out the form, that would make it a lot more streamlined. If that makes sense, would that help?
I feel like the city managers, since this is tasking work to
Yeah.
the city, was probably going to want to speak on that one.
First of all, let me apologize for getting in late. My last meeting ran long. I wish I'd have been in the beginning of this, so it kind of got you through a little bit of this. If you are going to mimic the rules that the council is already doing, I would suggest that you just mimic the whole process. The city clerk already has this thing worked out. It works like clockwork. I would just say do whatever they're doing. Don't try to invent something for yourself. Use their same process, change it to a different email address, or change it to whatever you need to do to make it uniquely this. But if you're going to adopt what they're doing, adopt the whole thing.
Yep.
Right. And let their process work for you also.
Yep.
Okay. That would be my suggestion.
Appreciate it.
If I may.
Go ahead.
And I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here, and I'm also not a Robert's Rules expert, so bear with me. What we just agreed and voted on was something that says request to speak shall be via email or in-person notification to the commission secretary. And I'm hearing that the commission secretary may not have the bandwidth to do that, and there may not be any other members that are accessible for in-person requests. So I think Commissioner Sessoms was on the right track with, we're now asking, while I wholeheartedly agree with what the city manager has asked for, I think we're setting ourselves up to not be able to manage that. And I also hear from Mr. Redmond that we don't want to kick this can down the road any further. So from a procedural standpoint, and I might not get this right, y'all,
That's okay.
but I'm wondering if we could, if there could be a motion on the floor that would cover an addition to this, and I know we've already voted on it, but that would say requests to speak shall be via email or in-person notification to the commission secretary or
their
designee.
Sure. That's easy. That's just a motion and a vote.
Yeah. Can I make one more suggestion?
Please.
Yes, sir.
All right. Ms. Matthews has graciously said, hey, she'll trial this for you and get the data that you need to determine what kind of a workload this is going to be for you. Leave it alone. You've already voted. She's already said she's going to do it. Move to your next subject. All right. Okay. Thank you.
I think that means we're okay for a moment. Then call her. Oh, I see what you're saying. It doesn't say anything about our telephonic. It says email or in person. So it's, yeah. So as far as your normal notification for something like this, your normal public notice, what would that put out? What would you normally put out for something like that?
So we will stay within FOIA requirement, which is 3 days, 3 business days.
Well, I mean, literally, what would you be putting out in the notice? Anyone wishing to speak at the meeting, I'm not asking you for exact language right now, but would it include that they can contact you? Would you include in your contact information, email and telephone?
Yeah. So my plan is just to use my crime commission email for that notification, because that way it's just funneled to one, not the email where I get everything. And then I'm just going to follow the city council's language
Okay,
and just do it like that.
all right. So that gets us through a month if she includes her phone number in her email. She doesn't have to, but she's going to. Yeah. And then if we, in a month, if we say that this is an issue, then we can vote to amend this to say must include. That's it. Okay. I think we have consensus. Okay. Anything further on this item? Item number 2 is complete. Attorney committee updates. Any committee updates? Item number 3 is complete. Moving to what would have been item 4. Yes, go ahead. We may have a committee update.
Committee update, so I'm not chair of any committee, but I do help out with, what was that, community engagement. So just to go over some things that have been brought to my attention when I'm out and about and speaking with those out. First and foremost, I think one of the things that's been asked, I think we've been talking about it now since October, would be getting the students, the young men and women, bus from London Oaks to Norcom. I have not heard a follow-up on that since October, so I'm trying to figure out what's going on with that, unless you've heard anything, Chantel, unless anybody can speak to that.
Okay.
What was it? So I think back in October, I think we, a couple of members from the board did go out to London Oaks, and some of the students, the kids, said they didn't feel too safe walking from London Oaks to Norcom. And my question is, I'm trying to figure out what is the delay in possibly getting transportation for those students to the school.
Chair, would you want me to address that?
Yes, please. And this came out of a, I don't remember, it was a reset walk, but it was a, what was the actual event down there in London Oaks? It was
Kid
as
got
a
shot.
result of a shooting, yeah. But I can't remember which group was hosting it. But one of the items that came out of it in a public request for feedback was that several students spoke to members of the commission offline and just said that they were concerned of their own literally safety walking to Icy Norcom from London Oaks. And I don't remember specifically how the request had been channeled, but I believe at the time that the request had been channeled perhaps to the school district about trying to get busing, even though I guess it was a question of distance versus safety. If it's just distance, that's one thing, but you know, that they just did not feel safe walking to school from Icy Norcom. It was right after a shooting that had happened down there. It had happened in London Oaks.
Yeah, what I'm going to ask you guys to do is have some member of your group, or maybe you, that has a relationship with the school board, because that's who's ultimately going to have to address that. The city don't transport to and from school, you know, so that's going to be a school board decision. So you're going to have some mechanism to get your request in front of the school board so that they can either address it or tell you why they can't address it, or put a plan together, whatever the case may be. But that's going to be a school board decision that has to be made.
Yes, and I actually made that request at the school board meeting, and a email correspondence was done between Chief Jenkins and Superintendent Bracy, and a report, the email was read, partial email was read, and basically it was determined that a bus was not needed at this time because of the information that was provided from the chief. I would recommend having the Chief Jenkins to come to the school board meeting and present his findings to us. In addition, I was informed that an equity study had to be performed in order to get a bus, because there are other walkers around the community. And if we get a
Right.
bus for one community, then we would have to potentially get buses for all of them. So we needed to do a study to determine what the cost would be and who would need to be transported. And
Okay.
that's the last thing I've heard, which was back in October.
Okay. Yeah, but ultimately, that's, the decision on that is going to come out of the school board. That's not going to come from the city.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see, well, I've got the mic. Sean, anybody got anything else? We good? While I do have the mic, Chantel, could we, is there an update, or just, I guess, trying to figure out what the holdup might be on the Safe Passage program?
So, I would say that if it's on your commission, that question is what I would consider conflict of interest.
You're not on audio? Sorry.
I would consider that question, my response to that question, a conflict of interest at the moment because of who's on your commission.
All right, good point. And that's another, for this and also some other discussions that we have coming up, because Ms. Matthews is going to be a presenter. We're in a unique position that some members of this commission are also involved with organizations that are on the receiving ends of some funds that Ms. Matthews and the city disperse. So she will know better than I whether or not something presents a conflict, but if she does, in her opinion, feel that something presents a conflict, then I'm going to ask that at that moment that we freeze that line of questioning and that we just not, proceed with anything that's determined to be a conflict of interest to preserve the integrity of the board. Anything further regarding committee updates?
Last on my list would be for the violence interrupters. Let's not forget that if we could, I know we're in a trial era, I believe that is. Let's try to make sure we don't forget that if we can make sure they can try to get some benefits somewhere down the road for those individuals, please.
And I guess while we're on the subject of the violence interrupters, we did have a good opportunity, and thank you, Ms. Matthews, for getting those invites out to do one-on-one meets with some new violence interrupter crew at the city manager's conference room last month. So that was very educational and eye-opening, and I appreciate you getting that set up, and thank you to the city manager for being part of that. And it was real good feedback and good discussion that took place. Okay, moving to item 4, which would have been Chief Jenkins. He is not going to be able to be here for the reasons that we discussed earlier. But one of the things that I did want to mention is that in our most recent meeting, we voted on a recommendation to the city that parking enforcement that currently falls under the parking authority be moved to the police department, and that those positions be reprogrammed, and that the training and the equipping and the uniforming and all those things related to parking enforcement be turned over to the police department to be reprogrammed into some other type of public safety officer who will still do the public or parking enforcement, but also be able to expand into the Southside Parking District and be usable for other things, directing traffic, walking patrols, things like that in those areas that will align with the city's crime reduction plan. That was the recommendation made by this panel, and I'm glad to say that at this weekend's city council retreat on Friday and Saturday, on Friday, Chief Jenkins put forward his proposal to have exactly that take place, and had a nice presentation to the city council and all of the heads of all the different city boards or city departments, explaining how this was going to work. I'm not here to speak on his behalf, but I just wanted to congratulate the commission for making that recommendation, because it is moved forward, and as far as I understand, and unless I see a sideways head nod from the city manager, I believe that this is going forward with all haste. So So thank you to everybody for that, and it just proves that as a commission, we can recommend things and that the city will act on them. So thank you. That is moving forward. Separately, I have had 2 good meetings with some folks, and I'm not going to say too much information here. I'm going to send you the information out instead. But with some folks from Old Dominion University's Center for Mission Engineering, trying to piggyback on some other projects that the city is working on to try to incorporate our crime reduction suggestions into something that would be seen through a mission engineering lens and that would be looked at by the scholars at Old Dominion University as well to come back to us with suggestions. Not anything that we can fund ourselves, but perhaps we can piggyback on something else that the city's already working on funding to get some of our ideas and suggestions into documents that become plans for the city. So I'm going to send that out to everyone, at least what I've shared with them this week, just so that you have an idea of some of the things that I've been working on. Go ahead, Darryl.
Good afternoon. I would like to share that yesterday, Pivot for Peace, which is the violence intervention team, did a launch of actually in the Dales Home community, which Dales Home today makes 301 days without no violence inside the Dales Home community. As we know, that's one of the community that was plagued by violence, and a lot of times what's being said isn't what data actually shows. And that community came out in force. We engaged over 300 people inside that Dales Home community yesterday. It was a beautiful day. The weather held up for it. And just to see that community and seeing people in that community have a sense of morale inside a community that's been talked about so much in a negative light, but never has been talked about in a positivity where that community has joined forces together collectively to go 300 days in an area, and I think that should be commended not only by the task force commission, but by the city in general to just empower those people that when they work together, what they can achieve together.
That's wonderful. Is there a particular community group that if we were to put something in writing that we could present, that would be the identified face of the community, that we could go down there and say, here's a certificate, here's a piece of paper, here's something that says that we as a commission recognize how hard they've been working?
Yes, we actually engaged their property manager who actually came out, and she's been a property manager out there for over 20 years, I believe, and she was able to see a sense of the people that have been alleged perpetrators of violence inside the community working together collectively to do it. So I believe with us giving her something that she can actually share with her community and get out to the residents will be something that actually could uplift the morale and continue to keep them on a path of doing right.
Okay. All right, I'll have that conversation to see if there's a possibility of, I don't know if there's a proclamation or some other sort of documentation that we can put out as a group, but something nice, in writing, presented to them, sometimes has a lot of meaning to folks to see it's being recognized.
And to also, what made that so monumental also is because we sit in spaces and you'll hear about communities here and you'll hear 600 and 300. That community is actually the one that has been labeled 300, which we know that is only 1% of people inside communities that perpetrate that violence. So that community has held a stigma because of what 1% of the people have done and have been labeled that whole community as 300. And for them to go 300 days with no violence inside a community, that every time you heard 300 is looked at in a negative light, I think that there's enough to celebrate. I think there's enough to enjoy. And we always want to thank for those partners who came out, which engaged that community, because it's time to transform the narrative, because we see people going inside communities that isn't plagued by violence. And if we look at our map, we can show you that some of the communities that these people engage, per the map, is more dangerous than Dale's Home, but those people still don't get the due diligence and the respect that they should with working together collaboratively.
Appreciate you highlighting that. Okay, moving on to our next agenda item, a presentation on an update on the Portsmouth United program from Chantel Matthews, our Safer Communities Program Manager. And are you able to use your remote from the podium? Okay, we have a driver.
All right, y'all, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm very excited to be up here showing y'all a recap, our 2025 recap for Portsmouth United. Over time, Portsmouth United has, when I first started, it really felt like I was coming in, I was trying to figure some things out. It was crazy, it was chaotic, and it still sometimes feels that way, but Portsmouth United is really becoming a labor of love. Is blood, sweat, and tears. And it's not just me, it's, people working together in the community collectively to make a difference. I will shout out our violence interruption team, Pivot for Peace, for the work they've been doing so far. And then just to piggyback off of what Commissioner Redmond mentioned, we were in Dale's home yesterday, 301 days of peace. And Portsmouth United, you're going to see me go through some things, you're going to see some numbers, but what Portsmouth United is here for is changing the narrative. So Dale's home is there. The people in that community are changing the narrative with our support. So thank you, Ruth. Can you go back? Thank you.
Very well.
So I'm going to go ahead and present. I love this little prezi. I'm going to go ahead and start. You can click through. All right, so I'll be talking through our Safer Communities. I want to pinpoint that Safer Communities is funding that comes from the state. Portsmouth United, or Safer Communities Portsmouth, was designated $2.923 million to initiate our Office of Violence Prevention or something similar. So Portsmouth United does operate as OVP, but we just brand it Portsmouth United. Some cute pictures. Here's our key impact metrics. We had last year, because this year that number has increased, but for this year, but last year we had 23 community partners, and they targeted some of the areas that Safer Communities wanted us to focus in on, which was mentorship, workforce development, developing positive relationships with law enforcement. So those partners filled in those gaps for us. We had over 10,000 participants, and we served Portsmouth citizens ages 4 to 60. We focused on some key areas. Y'all hear me say this all the time. We have faith-based violence intervention, or violence interruption, faith-based engagement, community awareness, and community partnerships. Most people are aware of the community partnership component, but Portsmouth United has those other pieces, especially crisis stabilization. A lot happens around stabilization and helping families that have been impacted by gun violence. And then we're going to talk more about violence interruption a bit. That's just a highlight of our 23 community partners. We do have like a little Zoom in coming up, but we had all of those people were meeting with us on Thursdays, doing work in the school system, doing work in the community, and without them, we wouldn't have been able to have the impact that we saw last year. I'll talk a little bit about our mini grant program, some things that we did last year and some things that we shifted from last year. So last year, we funded 23 organizations. It was 50% upfront so that the work could start, and then the other 50% was given on a reimbursement once documentation was provided for that initial 50%. In order for us to fund organizations that were newer, organizations that may have just started, we actually reverted that to just all reimbursement. So this year that those grant funds are on 100% reimbursement. And in addition to that, for the state, the way that we have to document, it makes that documentation process easier, because even though these funds are for the city of Portsmouth, the accountability is happening on the city level and also on the state level. But those, the funding that went out, all is supposed to go toward prevention, intervention, or treatment. Primarily, those funds last cycle and this cycle went toward prevention. So moving forward, you will start seeing more of the effort being put on the intervention piece. Go to the next one. Last year, one of the things that took place that was a shift for our community was our, wow, I almost forgot what they were called. We had reset walks. Reset walks were hosted by the police after incidents of gun violence. We moved to a community response. So our reset walks are now CRE's community response events. This gives us an opportunity to come together as a community. We can provide resources. Sometimes, well, we haven't done this yet, but Brave Spaces will be offered to these communities as a follow-up. So it just has it as more of a collective effort. And then we bring resources to them as we are out there taking a stand against violence. So it's a more comprehensive approach to responding to gun violence. This is one of the things that I'm very proud of what happened last year with Portsmouth United. It was so many things shifting. When this shift took place, I was just really proud of how we were able to come together quickly. The goal is to not have to have these, right? We don't want to have community response events. But when we can come together after these incidents, it makes a statement. In addition to that, people in some of these areas where these incidents are happening don't feel seen and heard. It gives them an opportunity to feel seen and heard, and it gives us an opportunity to get resources to them even after that CRE. There was something else I wanted to say about that, but it just left me. Hopefully it'll come back. Community collaboration, we're growing our collaborative efforts, but that's a list of all the schools that we, through our community partners, had an impact on, where we were able to be in those schools. Edward Brown Foundation was in New Directions, started a program there. And SIS was in some of our middle schools, so we had a really good collaboration with the school system through our community partners. We had to work through some kinks because the school system does have their own structure, and there's a lot of, sometimes it feels like red tape to get into the schools. But we were able to partner with student support services. I work closely with Ms. Jaquel, and we were able to work through some of those kinks for the programs that needed to be in the schools to function well. And to get some of those barriers down for them. And we're still working through that. Peace Week, so you can click through these. So Peace Week was a labor of love. It's a program that was taking place before I was in this position, before Portsmouth United was up. I want to say for 4 years, and then we got together and said we want to expand Peace Week. We had the resources to be able to do it, and the whole week of spring break, we were able to provide opportunities and programming for youth and adults in our city. And I'm just glad that it was a successful week, a very peaceful week. We ended the week with Peace Fest, which took place in Festival Park, and we had our community partners there, like tabling, sharing their resources, and it was a focus on something that the youth really wanted. Like, it was meeting the youth where they were. Give Back to the Block spearheaded that effort along with Big Homies, Believe, Pray, Overcome. So it was a really good collaborative effort to end Peace Week, and it gave us an opportunity to have a touch point with our community. Peace Week, being the signature program that it was, we had, you can go back, thank you. We had over 20 programs and services provided that week. We had 30 plus youth go to do like college tour of JMU. That was a program that was already happening, and we went to that organization and said, can you open some spots for youth that wouldn't usually have this opportunity? And they were like, yes, we will. And then there were many camps, many different opportunities happening during the week. And Peace Week was a very peaceful week, by the way. We had 0 youth-involved incidents that week. We actually had a really fun initiative. It was our art mural project that we partnered with Virginia Center for Public Safety on. We engaged youth from the community in creating and mapping out and just building out this beautiful image that is in the police department. So it showed the collaboration between the community and the police department. Very tasking, very tasking. We had some amazing artists who worked with that program who, because they're used to working on their own pace and doing their own thing, working with youth, it was a little bit of a challenge, but they ended up getting everything going. The youth learned about like the sketch process, and they even learned some stuff around the business side of art as well. So it was a really cool program. It was supposed to run the course of the summer, and it ran until the end of October. And then we actually partnered with IC Norcom because they had a Stop the Violence art contest. So we showcased their artwork when we showcased the mural. And it was a beautiful evening of just highlighting all the things we love about the city of Portsmouth. Crisis stabilization. So within our crisis stabilization component, so I feel like I'm talking to the choir because I feel like y'all know all about this, but crisis stabilization really grew when I came into this position. There were some gaps around the stabilization piece as it pertains to not necessarily how the community was responding when events happened, but when we think through like internally, like something happens, people's first point of contact is the police department. So we wanted people to have what I talked through when it talks about safer communities, that positive interactions with the police. So that kind of played into how we built out our crisis stabilization component. If an incident of gun violence happens, we have a process where there's an intake, and then we come alongside those families and we get them what they need, and we work closely with Community of Change to support those families long term and get them what they need. Crisis stabilization in 2025 now looks like crisis stabilization, response, and healing in 2026. So this component of Portsmouth United is going to grow into what I just mentioned. So there's going to be the response component and then the survivor healing component. So you'll see survivor support groups coming up, and you'll see more of an effort on care in that immediate response. Domestic violence is also falls under domestic violence support falls under Portsmouth United, and we really work closely with her shelter to make sure we are taking care of our survivors of domestic violence well. I'll talk about Safe Summer really briefly. There were a ton of events that happened throughout the summer. I think we were like over 20 events that were Portsmouth United funded events that happened during the summer. The YMCA had free team memberships. We were able to sponsor that with the funding we had. Mercy Chefs did a huge back to school bash. And I hope the next slide is talking about the work program. Yay, it is. So. Safe Summer, there was a Safe Summer Youth Lawn Care program that we partnered with Give Back to the Block, Footprint Foundation, the Sheriff's Department, to employ 36 youth. And the good thing about this program was that we engaged the communities that were our focus areas. We went straight to them, right? And we were able to engage with the youth in that community, and then they went and did lawn care for seniors, and they were paid. $250 a week. I was like, I can't remember how much they were paid, but $250 a week. They were paid with an item called Perfect Gift, because we had to do a lot of like trying to figure out how to pay them. You don't want to pay them cash. You don't want to pay them with a check. But we were able to make sure they got paid, and they worked for 6 weeks. On the days that they couldn't work because it was too hot or it was too rainy, they were able to do things that were skill building type things. So this was just a really strong initiative. I was appreciative of this initiative because it made me feel really in tune with the community, because some of those youth were in our office on certain days when they couldn't be in the community. So I was able to get to know some of them, and that was really just really a memorable thing for me for this past summer. Highlighting some of our community partners, Edward Brown Foundation, they were able to, they do some mentorship already, but they were able to replicate what they do in the community in the school system. So they are at S.H. Clark, working with the youth in that school, and they were able to, they actually have expanded to Craddock, but last year they were focused at S.H. Clark, so I wanted to highlight them. Catch More Kids, they have a dynamic program that's run out of J.E. Parker that focuses on conflict mediation. And I wanted to highlight them because it talks through the emotional regulation component. There is this theory that for people who find themselves in disproportionate situations because of some of the decisions they've made, they could get 10 minutes back. Their life would be different, right? And this program speaks just to that. It talks through decision-making, et cetera. This is a little breakdown of where our funding went. Last year, we spent $2.45 million. We did not spend down that whole $2.923. We wanted to make sure, however we spent the funds, that it was a responsible use of those funds. And we just, because the program wasn't yet built out the way it is now, we didn't spend those funds down. This will not be the story this year. We're looking for additional funds now that the program is up. But you'll see where the breakdown came through. Most of the funds that we spent down went to community organizations. Mind you, that amount went to 23 organizations. You see the operational costs, Safe Summer, Peace Week. We did spend some funding on training and technical assistance. And then about 64,000 went to crisis stabilization. We're on par to probably double that crisis stabilization number this year. 1.45 went to community organizations, and we'll see how everything kind of settles at closeout. A little look forward. Pivot for Peace is up and running. They are getting operational as we speak, and they are, and like you had mentioned earlier, this is in a pilot phase. In addition to the sites that we have, Southside, Dales Home, London Oaks, and then a section of Prentice Park, since this program has become operational, right, we're seeing the positive effects of this program already. So we are looking to expand to additional sites, but that's all based on funding. We have went to the city and said, hey, this is the funding we might need if we want to expand to the other sites that need that support right now. Those other sites, I can let you know, one of those sites is Brandon Square. The other one is Hamilton Place. And I think if we were able to expand, we would really see some really heavy positive impact as to pertaining to homicide reduction and violent crimes, gun-related violent crimes. Safe Passage is expanding, and I'll let you know the funding for that is en route so that program can fully launch. Bus Stop Safety is not operational. We're helping to expand it. So once that funding is cleared, we've sent everything up. Once that funding has gone through, Bus Stop Safety will be able to operationalize and get to where it needs to be. Now, Bus Stop Safety the expansion is also a pilot. So we're just trying to see, okay, with Bus Stop Safety up and the VI team being deployed, what are the big wins, what are the big gains from having both of these programs operationalized in the city. Project 180 is once again another program, is a reentry and success support program for folks who are on probation. This is in collaboration with probation and parole. And I'll let you know, I've been in the office working, and then that program starts. It's hard for me to leave because everyone's so comfortable. And then you start to see like the real changes starting to happen, people mindset shifting, people reaching out for help when they need it, people who wouldn't normally do that. So that program is a pilot, but we will be continuing Project 180. We will expand to a youth Project 180, and that's supposed to launch during Peace Week. We have our mobile app, which is finally up. Thank you, Mr. Leo. He's gone. But Lee Deere, who was just here, he played an integral role into getting the mobile app up and running, and we are still working out kinks and things like that, but it is actually up, and you can go to it. It's portsmouthbuzz.com. There's going to be a focus on training and capacity building. Shout out to everyone who was concerned about my workload. I am concerned as well. But I am appreciative of y'all speaking up for me. The training and capacity building is going to be for all of our orgs, and it's going to be really for me too, because I came into this position with some experience, but not a huge ton, right? So now that the learning curve is catching up, right? There is going to be some work around capacity building. We're going to be working with MC&T. We're going to be working with Intervention and Strategy Group and some other folks who have done this work around the country to just provide their expertise. We have expanded our domestic violence services in conjunction with Her Shelter. There's going to be a lot of education and prevention happening. There was some things happening in the schools last week. And we're fine-tuning a lot of that as we go. And then there is a goal of more targeted funding. So how that looks is if we have 5 organizations that apply for funding for a reading program, I'm going to need y'all to collaborate, come together, create a coalition or something, and then that's what Portsmouth United will fund. And then y'all get together, create your data points. That is what we'll fund versus funding 5 reading organizations and 5 organizations that are all doing the same thing. We want people to be more collaborative because funding, I do not believe I don't believe the state is giving us any additional funding. And while all these programs are great and these programs are going to make big impact, they require funding to do it. And even with the violence intervention team, to grow, to expand it, it needs to be funded. So we have to be even more intentional about who we fund and how we fund. Doesn't mean that people aren't going to get funding. It just means there's going to be more intentionality behind how we fund, with an emphasis on collaboration and an emphasis on intervention. Because right now there's a lot of prevention work that's funded. We need more intervention work to be funded, because what I'm seeing in my role is when it comes to intervention, working with those highest at risk of shooting or being shot is limited. Is limited what is funded. That's because all those folks who do intervention work didn't necessarily apply for funding, so it's not necessarily like on us that they didn't get funded, but we will have to be more intentional about how that funding goes out. And that's it. Do y'all have any questions?
I had a couple. Excuse me. You just mentioned working with the Her Shelter. Is the YWCA of Southampton Roads already involved with Portsmouth United?
So I would say no. Now, we went to them for training, and they were very generous with giving us the initial training when we first last year started the domestic violence support program, but they're not a partner that's funded the way that Her Shelter is.
Is there, what I'm offering is if there is any need, if you already, it sounds like you already have those comms going, but if not, I can work to bridge that if you need it in any way, shape, or form. I was approached just as recently as last week by them saying that they wanted to help in any way that they possibly can, so.
Yeah, that would be great. Yep, I definitely take that, you up on that offer.
Peace Week. I know, I've been saying this, and I don't know if I want to make sure that I'm being accurate. I know that we had no violence issues during Peace Week in 2025, and that was phenomenal. Have we ever compared that statistically to years past to be able to say this was an X% reduction or something like that?
Yes, I did. I went to our crime analysis person and asked them to show me the numbers from spring break to spring break. And it wasn't too far off. It just depends on the year. Like, we had one year where it was like the numbers were up. Sure. We had one year was nothing. So it's not, and I don't have enough data to say that this was conclusively because of Peace Week. But
It
because
sure didn't hurt.
year to year,
Right.
it varies. Now, what I can say is we know that, and this gets tough in this position because it's hard to track something that didn't happen that you knew could have happened. So that gets sticky,
Yeah,
but we know it could have been
how do you
a
count
busy
things?
Peace Week,
Yeah.
but
How do you count
How do
things
you
that
count
didn't
it?
occur?
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
it's a problem. And then the last question I had was youth artists that you've got doing murals and things like that. Do you have any need for them to, or are they looking for more projects? And the reason I ask this is because the Wall Street Mural Festival is another event that's coming up, supported or sponsored by Portsmouth Public Art, and a bunch of other different organizations that get involved. And last year, for example, they had a Coast Guard versus Navy mural contest, and I don't know if there was a way to try to. It may be too late this late into the season, but for future thinking to say, if you've got different groups of kids, give them a section of wall and a theme, and that way they will be seen by thousands of people at that event.
yeah.
So just something for us to think about going
Yeah.
forward, but getting SPPA engaged in this, that would align perfectly with their projects, with their mission statement.
Yeah. So to shout out that group, they did the mural at Safety Town, and they're supposed to do something, I want to say, at the barn for the police.
Oh, for the horses. Yep.
But we have opened that up, like, when people were coming to see the wall, and they were like, can they do something here? We're like, yeah, just give them time, but
Yeah.
throughout the city, I think
But I'm
we
talking
have
about
some
having the
interest.
kids do it.
Yeah.
Having youth artists do it. If you have any interest in that, I'm on that board as well. So
That'd be cool.
Just let me know, and I'll be happy
Thank
to
you.
help. Any questions from the rest of the commissioners? Commissioner Redmond.
Yes, it's not a question, it's just about that. I believe one time we was trying to find out who it was. Me and Leticia was trying to work, and remember we was trying to go back there with the murals? What's that space in the back?
You
Wall
talking about
Street.
off of High Street? Hatton?
Off of High Street in the
Hatton
back.
Street to Wall Street, yeah.
Could you give an update? Remember we was trying to get that, what was the barrier?
Oh, there is one wall back there that is going to be demolished by, it's property that's been purchased by the Economic Development Authority, and is going to be knocked down. It's the one which has all the sponsors' names on it. Yeah, but only that one is being knocked down, and I believe it's not going to be knocked down based on the most recent timeline I've heard prior to this year's mural festival. But they're not planning on doing any more painting on it because the building itself is not going to exist anymore, so it would be wasted effort. But there are several other properties there and across the street, actually, that have been identified for this year's mural festival.
Yeah, I was just saying, I'd like to speak with you offline when we
Yeah,
have
sure.
a conversation because.
Happy to help. Commissioner Rice.
First, thank you for the presentation. It was good. Looking at it, are there any groups that are coming to Portsmouth United wanting to combat human trafficking? Do you see anything of that sort coming that way?
So within Safer Communities, we have a charge, and human trafficking does not fall under that charge. Domestic violence does because it's related. So domestic violence falls under there because some cities started seeing a decrease in general homicides and an uptick of domestic violence related homicides. So I think that's why the domestic violence piece was able to fit under there, because some cities are also moving domestic violence under their OVPs. So that's kind of the difference.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Thank you. It was an excellent presentation. Appreciate all the work that you're doing, and the multiple hats that you're wearing. And I'm hoping that the city and the citizens, and the city government and the citizens of the city recognize you're moving the needle. And it's not an easy thing to do, and it's deeply appreciated, I'm sure, by everybody on this dais. And thank you for everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
So, sure. Appreciate the presentation. All right. Our next meeting will be held on April 6th, 2026? That's a good question. Let's fix that one right now then. What is the brackets of Peace Week? So, yeah, that's always a. So do you have access to that calendar now, or is it something? Okay. So I would ask then if you can reach out to Ms. White. Let's get a recommendation. I'm trying to the extent possible to keep us to that Monday that are scheduled each month. Last month I made the call. If we can't hold it on the night that we're supposed to hold it, then we shouldn't, because it causes problems for everybody else's schedule. Between the different city entities that use this space, the folks that are taking care of the AV. So if you can check and see what the options are, Chantel, but I'm inclined to not hold if we're not going to be able to hold it on the night that we have it, rather than have one. I'm inclined to not hold it if we can't hold it on the night that we hold it. In other words, push it for a month, if that's what it comes down to. Only because most people have other things on other Monday nights and stuff like that, We could. We're going to see what the options are. Chantel's going to get back to us. And I'll put something out and letting folks know what our options are. Anything else for the good of the order? Anything else? All right. I appreciate everyone. I appreciate the public who are here in attendance. And I call this meeting closed at 7:25 p.m.